hi.
Hey, it's Kevin Petersen. Jay Staples here, just kind of serving up questions that Kevin Petersen would call Family Matters. We do this every Thursday-ish and to the best of our abilities, and we answer questions. Sometimes most people don't want to ask out loud or things that we hear all the time. But Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm well, Jay. I'm well. How about you, my friend?
I am well, but I am not doing well because outside circumstances, i.e. Ryder Cup and Green Bay Packers and Milwaukee Brewers about to start the playoffs. So my self-worth is tied, obviously, to outside sources. So I'm well, but not well. So does that make me codependent?
Sure. I mean, I'm no comment, man. My mental well-being is tied to a Saturday afternoon game from guys that are 18 to 22 years old. So, you know, I mean, what can I tell you? Yeah.
Well, I will say I didn't realize at the time, but watching the Ryder Cup and Masters, I put my life on hold for, and I was so upset going into Sunday. Europe has a huge lead, and then to have that play out, like they almost did the unthinkable, and they held my attention for far too long into NFL games, mind you, as well, and I was hooked, and so I appreciated being hooked, and just everything about it. So Anyway, that's our job here is to stump Kevin Petersen, and we haven't done that yet, but keep the questions coming. If you're seeing a replay of this, because most people don't see it live, put it in the comments, or you can always direct message one of us too. If you need anything, do not hesitate to reach out. Reaching out doesn't cost a thing. Don't worry about it. So already. Here's what these are really good questions. I just got to say. So, I went ahead and I narrowed this down for all of us. So I am becoming better and better at this every single week. So why does my son seem more alive when he's high than when he's sober? He's been sober now for 6 months ish, I think. Because she goes back and forth for 3 sentences whether or not he's 6 months sober, but but he seems angry, resentful, and just lazy in the last 6 months since getting sober.
Well, that is a hell of a question, man. Starting off,
I think it's interesting that she says more alive, high.
Yeah,
I mean, that to me there's power in those words.
Oh yeah, no, totally. Bringing the heat. So I have a homework assignment for this person. I want them to read a book called Dopamine Nation.
Ooh.
By Dr. Anna Lemke from the Stanford School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry, Addiction Studies. Because that's the answer, is that when addicts and alcoholics are in their drug and they're getting the dopamine, they are incredibly animated and like, this is great. The problem is it becomes about the pursuit of that dopamine 24/7. And I am no doctor. I am no, biological scientific guy. So, but I got to tell you that book has, and some of the videos that come with it has done the best to answer that question for people that are not addicts and alcoholics. Addicts and alcoholics know why, because when we're getting our medicine, we feel great, so we're alive, we're rocking and rolling, we feel fantastic. But we're also, I think this person would also admit there's a roller coaster effect, right? We're up, we're down, we're up, we're down. And now what she's seeing is probably not so much down, but like flat, and if he's 6 months, and then again, you got to read Dopamine Nation. Dr. Lemke and even Dr. Kelly at Harvard, Stanford, Harvard, questionable reputation, both facilities. They they both say the same thing: 18 to 24 months before the brain comes back and the emotional roller coaster ends. So that's the answer. That's just the answer. His body is readjusting itself. It's going to take 18 to 24 months. He's not feeding himself the things that were giving him the high highs and also the low lows. And if you think, be careful here. If you think he's really struggling emotionally, then maybe he needs to see a therapist and maybe a psychiatric nurse practitioner or a psychiatrist. Maybe there is a deficiency in his biology where he might need a little boost, like an SSRI, no benzos and no speed, no Adderall, none of that shit. But and there are even lower things than SSRIs. So, that's a potential. I mean, his body may need some help getting itself back on track chemically. But that's really the answer. It's just that simple. We pursue dopamine to our own detriment, and then, when we take it away, we take the drugs and the alcohol away. Yeah, we crash. We crash. That's why he needs to be engaged in a process for 9 months or a year of inpatient, PHP, IOP, outpatient, but sober living.
Well, that's what I mean. If he's at home, living at home here or wherever it may be, I sure hope, getting him into a structured program, sober living, whatever it may be, and out of home may not be the magic cure, but it could do, that's why programs exist for this is why sober livings exist. But do you think that there's kind of you hear it all the time, and you and I hear it all the time, but do you think there's an aspect of kind of grieving within this, mom or dad, whoever, about, missing, maybe their life is, obviously if he's 6 months sober, their life isn't as chaotic than living with an addicted individual.
Great point. Because what they're used to is the roller coaster. And he's not on the roller coaster anymore. So they're going to be like, uh-oh, what's wrong? Yeah. It's like, nothing's wrong. You wanted him to change. Now he's changing, but that is so normal, right? Because the family is like, we're used to riding the roller coaster, riding the lightning, going crazy. And that's not what's happening. And so to them, it's going to seem abnormal as well as the individual. Yeah. So that's a great point. There's definitely that side, and then there's the family side. Great point.
Why do we pretend treatment is always the answer when it clearly hasn't worked for my family? Why does nobody talk about it, how expensive healing is?
Oh, that's a great question. I got to tell you, I was literally talking to a family last night about this exact same thing. The problem is that the acceptable standard today that insurance will cover has become 30 days of inpatient treatment. Maybe let's say it's probably anywhere between 15 and 28 days. That's what your insurance company is going to pay for, less your deductible. So, and they generally bill out about $1,000 a day. So you'll probably pay anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 for clean your deductible and then put them in. That has become the acceptable insurance/medical standard. And it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And we know that the evidence shows that, 30 days doesn't solve the problem. 30 days barely clears you of the drugs and the alcohol. And what we know, because you and I've been doing this a long time, that 9 months to a year in a controlled, obviously highly controlled, less environment over a year is the way to go, because you got the guardrails on, and guys can get through the the physical side, get through the mental side, and really develop their own sense of who they are and what they are. Now, here's the thing. This is the conversation that I was having last night. Because I basically this dad asked me the exact same question. I don't understand. I said, that's a great question. I said, what's really interesting? In 2018, my wife was diagnosed with colorectal and kidney cancer. And we had great insurance, and we were in Denver. We had great people providing and taking care of us. And the moment they figured out what it was, the machine kicked into action. There was a playbook. There was and then they had, statistical results, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was going to be 6 weeks of chemo and radiation, 6 weeks off. We're going to do a 12-hour surgery after that. And then you're going to take X amount of time, and we're going to figure out whether or not we got all the cancer. If we did, great. And then turned out they didn't. So therefore, blah, 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 blah. There's just this whole process. They have a playbook that works. We don't have one for addiction and alcoholism. And that's the weird part, that we really don't. And I think, it's unfortunate and it's a chronic illness, that we don't have sort of a universal playbook of how to go about it. Because if we did, it would be 6 to 9 months in an inpatient environment. Obviously the first month or so inpatient, and then then sober living with PHP, IOP, and outpatient, eventually getting a job, going back to school, but doing it under the umbrella or under the security of trained professionals that are there to help you. Because that's where the success comes from. You come from a place that's a long-term program, and so do I. And we know that's where success comes from. It doesn't come from 30 days. But that's the answer of why everyone says treatment doesn't work. You're right, it doesn't. 30-day treatment does not work, 100%. And insurance companies won't pay for long-term. They'd rather pay the 30-day program 2 or 3 times a year. I don't get it. To me, give us that money and let us do our thing. I'm off my soapbox.
No, I mean, I think you hit it. I mean, there is no playbook, and there are no guarantees, and there's no promises or statistics or anything that families are so desperate to hear. I mean, this every day goes by that there's not a somewhat of discussion on my end about the cost of everything. And then obviously, when I'm an independent, resource, outside of treatment facilities and, charging, families are always naturally like, we got to pay you, we got to pay the treatment, we got to, aftercare, it's a lot to ask families. And I never want to forget that. And it's always been, keeping the family finances has to go into every treatment decision. But you're right, it's tough when there's a small amount of money and there's not a lot of options for that. It's almost like, I had a mom once say, like, we're almost like couponing. We got a set fee and we're trying to get 6 months of treatment for their daughter, and I'm calling places and we're angling, and the mom's like, we're kind of like couponing, and that's that's the best we can do. And these places aren't free, and insurance companies can alter their mind frame a little bit. I'll just say that. So
well, the funny part to me, right, is that obviously the reason why cancer, having specific cancer protocols is because it's shown to work, right? And at the end of the day, let's be honest, there's an insurance company behind that saying, and how can we do this most cost effective, And I mean, that's just the truth. I will tell you that at no point was anything skimped with my wife, Everything was, 100% all in, which was great. Yeah. You would think the insurance companies would take a look at addiction and alcohol treatment programs and say, we seem to be paying more than once for the same person to do the same thing. That doesn't make sense. Why don't we extend the initial coverage and the initial treatment and see if we can proactively knock down the cost here? I don't know what it takes. I mean, is it studies or, scientific stuff or blah, 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 blah. And I get that. I mean, but you would think they would want to lower their costs, and say, well, okay, let's look at Jaywalker. Let's look at Burning Tree. Let's look at Balance House. Let's look at the long-term programs. And why do they have a better success rate than the 30-day programs? What are we missing here? It's like, well, because it takes it takes longer than 30 days to get somebody out of the hole. So.
Well, you nailed it. I mean, I think if we need to prove, unfortunately, I'm not saying this is the good thing, is you have to prove to insurance companies that it's cheaper for them to cover long-term than over and over 30 days. And
Right.
obviously, and then when we're talking about this, my mind instantly goes to all the people that are trying to cheat the insurance programs and all the, I just have a family that's, their daughter, 19-year-old daughter, is stuck in the California triangle of, every 2 weeks she's in a different sober living and going back to detox for mental health, depression. And I was like, look at your insurance policy. I guarantee you there's a bunch of claims. So
yeah.
And the family's like, oh my God, you're right. I was like, don't pay anything. Anyway.
No, that's the other side of it, right? That is the other side of it, is that the insurance companies are leery of this industry because it's the wild, wild west,
People have made millions off them.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, you and I have seen it. Guys open up a treatment center who are like, 9 months sober. And the next thing you know, they have a big Ford Raptor, and then they get a Harley, and then they're buying houses, and, and it's like, what's going on? I mean, I don't begrudge anyone making money, but it's like they hit the lottery. I mean, what are you doing? And you find out that they're milking people's insurance.
Yeah.
I get where the insurance companies are leery of the industry, but that's what I'm saying. Come up with a protocol.
Yeah.
Force the treatment programs to follow the protocol.
Yeah, we can't blame all the insurance because we're dealing with addicts who, they may be sober, but they still have addict tendencies. So.
What do you mean, Jay? I don't understand.
I have to say, this next question put me in the category of a clinician, and I appreciate that. But let's just say this one goes to Kevin, because she said, with you, I need your opinion, both being clinicians. I'm not a clinician. Sometimes I make a lot of fun of clinicians, but I won't do that in this case. But Kevin would be, so I am just going to kind of sit back and listen. But here is a really, put your thought cap on here, Kevin. So I'm going to lead off with the actual question. She's got two questions, but I'm going to do kind of a tease. I'm going to start with the question and give you some backstory. So, what's the protocol when you're trauma bonded to someone in active addiction? So she is currently in school to become a clinician. And so she goes, this is a long email, but so the idea here is she has come from a long line of addicts and alcoholics, brothers, dads, uncles, she goes on and on and on. And so she said this past year within school, we have talked about some heavy topics and has led me to believe that I have now become trauma bonded with my addicted 22-year-old brother, and it's unhealthy. Yeah. And she said, for the longest time, I thought I wanted to be a counselor or a therapist to help people, but I'm soon realizing that I may not be qualified to be a therapist because I have a lot of issues around this myself. What's your insights into anyone wanting to become a therapist with their own trauma? And in general, she says, I think it'd be helpful for families to understand what's the protocol when trauma bonded to someone in active addiction.
Okay, two separate questions here, right? Okay, so let's take the second one first. What's the protocol? Great question. Here's the direct and straightforward answer. Get into your own trauma therapy. And I would say you want to look at attachment theory. You want to look at codependency. You want to look at your own internal trauma. Look at doing some EMDR or somatic work, meditation, yoga. What we got to do is settle your nervous system.
So what does she mean by trauma bonded?
Oh, sure. So trauma bonding, it's when you realize that your only connection is that you both share like a similar trauma experience, and you turn that into, that's all we have is the fact that we were both raised in this crazy abusive household. Therefore, we're super, super tight. But I mean, and that's great, right? There's a certain aspect of protecting one another and being there for one another. But unfortunately, it also means that you kind of, you're bonded in some of the crazy stuff that you do as well. Like her brother, it sounds like he's an addict or an alcoholic. So, she's not engaging in that, but that's part of the bond, is that, well, that's how he takes care of this. That's his, and so there's codependency there. Okay. The best, and this is the question I get every time. What's the most important thing I can do to help my person that's in addiction? Get into your own recovery. Set the example. If you stop responding to the trauma and show them a way out, that's going to help them the best. Not telling them what to do, not standing over them or belittling them or demanding, just changing the way you live and the way you respond to the trauma. And the next thing you know, they're going to be like, hey, what happened to I thought we were bonded. I thought we were
Amen.
Yeah. I thought we were besties. And we are. I love you, but my relationship with you has to be based upon its solution and positiveness, not negativeness. Like every time we get together, we just talk about, oh my God, remember that awful situation when we almost died? It's like, okay, look, I get it, but that can't be our thing. Our thing needs to be how we recovered from that and how we're living differently.
Well, for all the people that are not going into school and learning about this trauma bonding, there's a lot of people out there that don't even realize that that's what their bond is based on.
Well, there's a lot of marriages, there's a lot of relationships that are based upon similar experiences in childhood where they're very negative, but that doesn't mean you're going to have a good relationship. So that was the second question. The first question is, it sounded like she wanted to talk about going to graduate school or undergraduate and getting to, some sort of counseling or clinical degree, which I think is great. And here's the interesting thing. And I think she made a statement that maybe I'm not doing the right thing because I got my own trauma stuff. And here's the thing. Every therapist you'll ever meet has their own trauma. I mean, not me.
You're not supposed to say that. I don't think you're supposed to say that, Kevin.
Oh no. And I always tell people, it's okay to ask your therapist, do you have a therapist? And I see my therapist every 2 weeks. She's great. Guess what she specializes in? Grief, loss, trauma. Ta-da! And she's spectacular. And big shout out to her. She's really helped me turn my life around. But as a therapist, it's really funny in graduate school. Most graduate schools will force you to go to therapy while you're in graduate school because they don't want people using graduate school as therapy.
Really? Is that true?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We went to a Regis. You had to do 20 hours of therapy minimum. I mean, most people I knew were seeing a therapist on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, a good graduate school is going to force you to go into because otherwise your stuff is going to come out in therapy. Yeah. And we can't have that leakage going on. Transference, countertransference. We can't have that. You have to be able to walk into that therapy session. I mean, what the person's going to share is going to affect you. I mean, the idea that therapists just sit there like a wall, like this doesn't bother me at all. It bothers the hell out of us. It freaks us out.
This is like real stories of a therapist. I love this.
Well, it does, but we're taught how to deal with it, and we're taught how to process it, and that's what we're supposed to be teaching the client is, oh wow, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and that sounds terrible. Now let me give you some ideas of how we can get through this, and show you how to get through it, and how to make your life better. And that's the big challenge, right? But it's okay to have your own stuff. And the fact that you have a brother that's in an active addiction, I would actually tell you that's going to make you a hell of a therapist for families that are struggling with addiction because you get it. But hold on, you got to recover from that first. You can't have that wound continually being reopened and think, oh, okay, I'm good. No, you actually have to do your own therapy, do codependency work, go do your own 12-step work, and then you'll be able to help people. Yeah.
I mean, our stories have a story to tell themselves. And I mean, that's where I thought this whole, she can become a very powerful, therapist through this whole thing. And especially around the trauma bonding and the family aspect to it. And someone that uses clinicians a lot working with families, because families want treat Sally or Johnny and everything. A lot of times these family members are going to therapy themselves around this same kind of issue. She would be a dynamite therapist because of the scars that she has, I think. So
yeah, I mean, I kind of relate to it.
I mean, yeah, it just being in this industry. And I mean, there was 4 or 5 solid years straight where I thought about going back to school, becoming a clinician. I went against it just because I like this side of it and I like working with therapists. Sure. So, but she's got everything there, and no one's perfect. So if you think clinicians are all free, Kevin will tell you. Kevin will rip the curtains away. But therapists have their own crap, like we all. Yeah. So yeah. But absolutely, therapy helps immensely. So I'll just tell you that. So
yeah.
All right, sir. I'm sweating and exhausted. I mean, these were good questions.
This was a good one. This was a good one, man. These were all, you were bringing the heat today.
And someone thought that I was actually a therapist, which is, somewhat a compliment. Sometimes maybe not. But anyway, Kevin can handle all that. But keep it coming if you're watching. We're going to start splitting these up, and I'll start throwing them out, and Kevin will do it, let's create a buzz. If there's any questions or answers you need explanation on, reach out to us. All right, Kevin, you can tap out for the rest of the day.
All right, my friend. Good to talk to you.